Welcome back to Displaced Gamers. We've returned after, about a year for a Halloween episode. I am Chris. She is Ginger. And since Halloween is at the end of the month, we decided to do a special episode about Halloween games. It's a bit of a subjective term, but we decided that we would mention certain cliche games that you would mention. Survival horror series, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Five Nights at Freddy's, even something as simple as Castlevania. Those are very obvious go-to games during the Halloween season. So we tried to think of some games to do that weren't typical, things that maybe you didn't know about, maybe games that you haven't played, and just kind of roll through a bunch of them. And Ginger, the first one that we have on our list is actually one from, 2010, I think it was, Costume Quest. Could you talk about Costume Quest a little bit to kick us off?
Costume Quest is great. Costume Quest, so I think you actually are the one who introduced me to Costume Quest, because I knew about it. I've always known about it, because I like Double Fine, and I like the work that they do. In terms of gameplay and everything, it's basically just a quick time RPG. So, you run around, you get in battles. The game has a really cute, sarcastic tone, as a lot of those games do. Mm-hmm. And it's not spooky. It's definitely more of a fun game. But I still feel like it does a really good job of encapsulating everything about Halloween, because it takes place on Halloween, but it's sort of like all the fun parts about it, but also still being a little spooky as well.
Yeah, it was kind of our first selection, and I think what really brought this idea about was, it wasn't your typical survival horror game, but yet here it is, a Halloween game. It has that fun, nighttime atmosphere, and you're a bunch of kids running around in costumes and actually getting candy from houses, like ringing the doorbell and oh, look, here's somebody to give us candy, or ringing the doorbell and it's a monster and you got to fight him or whatever. And you go into that mode that you just described. And instead of, a little, toilet paper roll cardboard Statue of Liberty, suddenly you're like this Statue of Liberty and you're shooting things, and it's just all kinds of crazy fun Halloween.
Yeah, I think the Statue of Liberty was my favorite costume. And of course we can't forget the biggest thing about Halloween for those of us who have older siblings is the mean older sibling who's just picking on you all the time.
Yeah.
But anyways, I really like that game.
All right, next on the list, I'm also going to hand off to you, is Shadowgate.
Shadowgate had a really good death scene. When you die, the Grim Reaper shows up, and it's like, plays the music, and you're like, no, I died. But when I was a kid, that game scared me so badly. I never wanted to die, because I thought for sure that, I don't know, it freaked me out. But in addition to that, the game does a really good job of building suspense and making you stressed out with the torches, because the torches get low, and then you have to...
Oh, and the music changing when the torches are running out.
Yes.
And you just naturally feel uncomfortable.
You're like, no, I'm gonna die! And then, of course, you often die completely randomly because you walked into a room that had, what was it when I was visiting you recently, we were playing, and it was like the room with all the mirrors, and I kept telling you to break them, and we kept breaking the wrong ones and dying.
I believe there were 3 mirrors to choose from, and you would say something like, okay, let me think about this. It's definitely the right mirror, and I would smash it and we get sucked out into space or something like that. I'd be like, no, and then you're like, oh, well, then it's this mirror, the left mirror, and then we get cut up by glass or whatever. I can't remember. And then finally I was like, well, third one.
Yeah.
That was really great. It is a fun, I guess on that note, it's a very good couch game. If you have other people playing, especially if somebody already knows all the puzzles, then obviously they're going to be the ones that are just sitting there eating the whole time everybody else is playing, because otherwise it would be a spoiler. Because it's a pretty linear game with puzzle solving and such. But Shadowgate, definitely a game to check out. All right.
I'm still really bummed that we have not played Uninvited, because I have a feeling that if we had and we knew more about it, we would be talking about it.
Well,
because that one has very much of a horror, even just the cover of it is like, oh man.
I almost bought it a while back. So
I have it. I have it on. I bought it on as part of the Mac Venture
That's true.
series.
I was going to keep it a secret though, but cat's out of the bag. All right, next game up is House of the Dead, a rail shooter. So why don't you, not to be confused with Typing of the Dead, but House of the Dead. Talk about that.
I've never played Typing of the Dead.
You haven't? Yes, I have.
Oh, man.
So now people have to choose to either go the path of House of the Dead or the Typing of the Dead.
Why can't you do both?
I guess you could.
Yeah. No, House of the Dead, like, the reason I suggested House of the Dead is because realistically there's actually quite a few rail shooters that are part of the horror genre. But House of the Dead was one of those, like, defining experiences of my childhood where I would go to the arcade, when there were still arcades. I would go to the arcade and there would be, there was a lot of rail shooters. There was, like, Time Crisis, but House of the Dead, when it came out, had such good graphics, and you, like, blew off zombie arms and, like, heads. It was very gory, and I really enjoyed it because of that. So I wanted to suggest that one because I do feel that it fits in the horror genre, but at the same time, it's not necessarily in the realm of survival horror, in my opinion. And so I felt like it was still kind of a fun game. It's definitely one you yell at more than you freak out about.
So I think I want to segue right from this to Carnival in the arcade. So talk about that a little bit.
The only thing I vaguely remember from Carnival is the giant baby that chases you. I think that was the thing that happened in Carnival. But Carnival was the first game that I ever actually, like, beat in an arcade, and I think it cost me about $14 because I'm not actually good at games. And my brother and I, we went through, we played it together, we just powered through, we did it.
And was that it was a 2-player co-op game? Mm-hmm. Just like most of those cabinet shooters, yeah.
Like literally any rail shooter that has ever existed. 2 players, or if you're feeling really bold, you just put money in both slots and hold both guns.
That's the way to go. I mean, whenever, especially on the dual machine gun games, like if you're playing Terminator 2 or Revolution X, the Aerosmith game. But anyway, those kind of shooters.
Wait, what? I've never played this Aerosmith game.
I'll tell you about it later. I don't really know if it would be a Halloween game or not. But
it depends on whether or not you find Aerosmith terrifying.
Oh, snap. All right, so the next one I have on the list is a DS game, which I believe you have in front of you, and it is Teresia.
I do. I totally have Teresia.
So if you want to show that.
If you guys... Okay, so Teresia kind of falls under the category of same type of game as a sort of point-and-click action, but it is also sort of a survival horror. It just really bums me out because a lot of people didn't buy it. And it's hokey, it's cheesy, but it's really good. And it has a creepy atmosphere, which I really appreciated. But it's a bummer because when it comes to games that are on the DS, there weren't really a whole lot that released that fell under that genre. And of course there was one that was at launch called Dementium the Ward, or it might have come out a little later than the launch, but that was one of the first horror games that came out on the DS. It was like a really big deal, and then I think everyone got over it. But when Teresia came out, it was really, really cool because for me, as someone who is more of a fan of those old school point and click adventure games, it absolutely took me straight back to Shadowgate. And in fact, playing the game, I was like, oh, this absolutely reminds me of Shadowgate. And there's a point not too far in the game where you open a door or you go into another room or you move something, and as soon as you do, your body gets, like, impaled by a dozen sharp spikes or something super cheesy. And as soon as it happened, I just laughed. And I was like, I love this game. And no one's bought it. No one's gonna buy it. And now I don't know. Like, I don't even know what to suggest. But as for a game that's a little off the beaten path, I would highly recommend it if you're looking for something that is more horror focused to play for Halloween.
That sounds like another good recommendation. And I believe maybe our first official portable game. Although you might find some ports of these other games on modern handhelds as well. I have two that I want to mention that are DOS platformers. One is actually a game called Halloween Harry, which was later renamed Alien Carnage. But when it was first released, it was called Halloween Harry and has a little jack-o'-lantern on the title screen. And you might say, well, it honestly doesn't have too much to do with Halloween, except you're a guy with a jetpack and a flamethrower, and you're running around and you're killing monsters, and it's quite a bit of fun. But one that's actually more of a Halloween theme is Monster Bash, which was also by Apogee. Both games were by Apogee. And even on the title screen, Apogee would have their logo and a little ditty play, for their theme song. And sometimes they would make that unique to the game. Kind of like how sometimes you'll see a movie with 20th Century Fox and it'll have some extra fanfare or something at the end. And this one, it plays their little theme. And there's a moon in the top right corner. And right as the theme is finishing, you see the silhouette of a witch on a broom go by and she cackles. And then,
nice.
And it does this little cinematic opener, very cartoony. You play the role of a kid in like a jumpsuit pajamas with a little trap door at the butt and you're armed with a slingshot. And you see like blood run down the screen, and then like there's a zombie on the right side, and it says Monster Bash, and he like vomits up the name of the guy that made the game, and yeah, no, it's great. And so the object of the game is to run around and actually rescue animals, cats and dogs, from cages. And so you like use your slingshot and you slingshot open the cages, and you can't finish the level until you've freed all the animals. And there are zombies that pop out of the ground, and you'll see the trees have eyes, and they'll occasionally turn, and you'll see the eyes move, and there are little skulls that'll be floating, and you'll shoot them and they'll laugh and their eyes will bug out and fall off the screen. And so I consider it a pretty legitimate Halloween game. So,
I just like the idea of saving dogs and cats. It's so much better
see, there you go. You're like, I get to, blow zombies away and save cats and dogs. It's a game for the family on Halloween.
So wholesome.
Darkstalkers.
So, yeah, Darkstalkers.
Arcade beat 'em up. So why don't you take that one a little bit?
I mean, I don't know too much about Darkstalkers, except for the two figures that I have sitting where you guys can't see. Darkstalkers, I mean, it's just a fighting game, but it's cool because everything's kind of, I guess, scary, but not really. But I mean,
it's like fun scary. Like,
yeah. And I mean, both my figures are well, they're both Morrigan, but one of them's the Lilith variant, and they're, I guess they're like succubi. And then you have like Felicia, the little cat girl, and then I'm actually blanking on other characters that are in the game.
Have like a Pharaoh character and like a Frankenstein character,
Yeah. There's a good little variety there, but primarily also there's just, that's a good choice. Just because it does kind of fit with the theme of Halloween, or at least with the underworld and dark stuff, I guess.
Right, but if you want to play a fighting game and you want something Halloween themed, then maybe Darkstalkers is the way to go. So you mentioned how I've played a lot of FMV games. So I suppose I should mention Seventh Guest, which is now something like 24 years old or something around there, which is really hard to believe. Seventh Guest is an FMV puzzle game. So the FMV mostly comes in how you move about this big house and you watch certain cutscenes, but then you'll stumble upon a puzzle that you'll have to solve. The spookiness factor, I'm not sure if it would be there these days, but the atmosphere is there. It's naturally going to be, kind of low resolution, full motion video, because you're talking early 90s. I definitely thought that it was worth mentioning. It used to be the ubiquitous, Halloween type of game back in the early 90s, but now I kind of wonder if a lot of people have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
I believe you have another game, and is it Danganronpa?
Danganronpa? Yeah, it's you're close enough.
It's really hard to pronounce. I might not even be pronouncing it correctly, but yeah, that one was on the Vita, and it kind of reminds me of like Saw a little bit, just in terms of the way that it's set up. you're basically going to a school and you have to, it's sort of a kill or be killed situation. So a little bit maybe like battle royale type situation. I thought it might be a good one to throw out there because I don't think too many people have heard about it. But it is fun in that element. There's a lot of like puzzle solving and stuff that goes on in it as well.
Throwing it back to the arcades, and I'll let you take this one even though we've both certainly played it, Sinistar.
Oh my god, Sinistar. Sinistar is not really like all that scary, but it's definitely a game. There's like this big thing that flies around in the sky or in space, because you're in space. You're shooting stuff. It's very asteroid-esque. And as you're flying around, all of a sudden you'll hear it and it'll be like, "Beware I live.
Beware I live."
And you're like, oh crap, it's nearby. And you keep flying around and you're like, please don't let me die. I'm trying to get a high score. And the second that thing shows up on screen, it just zooms right towards you and you die, obviously.
Run, coward. I hunger, coward.
But it's funny because it kind of freaks you out a little bit and you're like, oh no, ah.
Yeah, it may not be a Halloween game. It'd say something like Costume Quest or Monster Bash or Darkstalker, something that has that Halloween feel to it. But it definitely is something that instills panic in you, yes, as a gamer in certain situations. So then let's go more modern, PS3 and the game Catherine. That's really shifting gears from Sinistar for sure and some of these other ones, but talk about this kind of passive creepiness factor that Catherine has.
Well, I like Catherine primarily because it just takes place in dreams. Also, you're kind of fighting with people who are also dealing with their own nightmares in regards to, basically just everyone's dealing with challenges in their relationships. And the whole point is that they've ended up in a place where they're having to fight their way to try to get out of it. But they're all sort of confronting their own inner demons or regrets that they might have. And as a result, I thought that Catherine was a pretty interesting option to include in this based on that kind of criteria.
I think I would agree with you. I mean, we've both played it through, and so
yeah.
and we've talked about it before. But I definitely think that it's one that kind of adds that kind of weirdness factor to it that makes it a good game to play around in the October time frame. Next up, speaking of October and Halloween, is Grim Fandango.
That's a good choice.
Which is definitely a fun adventure game in its own right, but the Day of the Dead aspect to it and the overall theme of it, I think, really feels like a solid October game to play. And now they even have Grim Fandango Remastered, so you can play it on some of the more modern systems. And
yeah, I have it downloaded on PS4, PS3, I forget. I have it on one of them.
Well, I finally played it through on PS4. I actually owned it for PC when it came out, but I never quite got all the way through it. As a matter of fact, I had a friend borrow it and beat it and give it back to me, and I was like, I need to get through this, and I never did. So when the remastered version came out, I said, oh, okay, I'm finally going to get this, and I'm going to play through it on a couch this time. And I finished it, and it's so much fun. I mean, it's a really great game on its own. So Grim Fandango, you should play that.
Hey, what's going down, clown? Hey, back off, suit. I'm practicing. Practicing what? Wringing your neck. What does it look like?
And then I have a couple of other ones to mention. One is an old DOS adventure game called Hugo's House of Horrors, which is very cheesy and it's very dated, but it's a graphical adventure, and you start out in front of this haunted house, and it has just all of these cliche things. You've got the jack-o'-lantern on the doorstep. You've got eyes looking at you through the windows. You've got bats flying around, and you have to make your way into this house and solve all these puzzles. And I mean, right from the get-go, like the first puzzle you basically have to solve is how to get in the house, and you have to like smash the pumpkin on the doorstop and then pick up a key and unlock the door and go in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you find a mask, and there are just all these funny ways to die, and it's I think it's a pretty short game. You might get stuck, but if you have a walkthrough next to you, you could probably blow through it in just a few minutes. But so that's a pretty fun game, Hugo's House of Horrors. And then the last game that I wanted to mention was actually the original Alone in the Dark, which may not hold up as well today, but it was definitely a noteworthy game of the time that it came out in the early 90s. And it actually saw ports beyond computers to, I believe the 3DO got a port, and maybe the PlayStation, some of the other consoles of that time. And so that one also is a 3D adventure game where you have to move around, pick up items, solve puzzles, combine things, that sort of thing. And, but it definitely has its own atmosphere, as you think it naturally would. And they did several sequels to it, and eventually did one in 2008, I think. And I think that's all the games that we got. It's quite a list of games. So, was there anything else that you wanted to mention?
I mean, not that I can think of off the top of my head. I know we had discussed like some, but then we were like, I don't know about these, and I don't really have any additionals, I wouldn't say.
Okay.
But yeah.
We had some that we cut out, we might do them if we do another episode or whatever, but we tried to pick a pretty good hodgepodge of games that were not related at all, and try to just throw them out there as examples of games that you might play in October around Halloween time. So, I guess that about does it for this episode. So we'll see you guys next time.